Ketty, are you there?
I am very much here.
You know that in February there was a delegation of five African leaders which went to the Burundian capital, Bujumbura, under the auspices of the African Union, and that was in fact the presidents of South Africa, Gabon, Senegal, Mauritania, I think, and the Prime Minister of Ethiopia. They had discussions with Burundian President Pierre Nkurunziza, and I got a sense that both parties had in fact agreed to what they characterized as inclusive dialogue. What happened? Because the ambassador here seems to be saying, frankly, that these are conditional, talks.
Mm-hmm. Of course, what happened is that the government has continued to drag its feet towards the implementation of these talks. As you have just heard, what the ambassador is saying is completely contradictory to what President Nkurunziza committed to with the 5 African heads of state. So by saying that the government only wants to talk with a certain group of people, it is imposing conditions. You do not impose conditions when you're negotiating, when you're doing peace talks. That's the first thing. The second thing I would like to say in reaction to what he just mentioned is he's saying that we cannot open the door to dialogue to people who have perpetrated acts of violence. I would like to comment on that. The opposition and anyone really who is showing an opposition to the current regime is being now called a terrorist. That's the new term that is being used, and they refer to the May 3rd coup attempt as as a point of reference. I would like to come back to the real perpetrators of violence. Let us remember today on May 4th, exactly on this day a year ago, the people of Burundi went peacefully to the streets. And the first party that started to impose violence on the other was the government of Burundi. It's the one that started shooting at people. So it is the first one that's really started the violence, and that is really, in a sense, the terrorist here. So saying that they will not welcome those who are being violent today is absolutely it doesn't make sense. And I think, quite frankly, to use your term, Shaka, I think that the government of Burundi and Pierre Nkurunziza himself have no intention, anyway, of leaving power. So they will comply once in a while with what the international community is saying. Yes, we will sit down for talks, but as you have seen, they keep dragging their feet. And I think they're saving time. They're trying to buy as much time as possible to be able to finish this controversial term. And then, we stay in this limbo, in this state of limbo that we've been in for the past year, where nothing really happens. We're sort of in a stateless state, in a failed state. But at the end of the day, the government is still there. Nkurunziza is still sitting at the top of Burundi. So it works out well for him at the end of the day.
Let me ask you a question, Ketty, and talk to me really from the deepest, better part of the bottom of your Bujumbura heart and soul, because you told me you come from the capital.
Mm-hmm, I do.
What are Burundians fighting for really? Because when you look at your constitution, for example, I will tell you that it is probably one of the most progressive documents that I have yet seen. It, of course, reflects proportional representation. You have power sharing between the major ethnic communities and what have you. What are Burundians fighting for, really?
I identify myself with this generation, this young generation of Burundians who are tired of the decades of conflicts, particularly ethnic-fueled conflict that we have lived, and who today, for the first time, at least a year ago, had an opportunity to start a new, clean chapter of democracy, of justice, of freedom in Burundi. And that is why they went to the streets. They went to the streets to say no to a corrupt government, a government that is notorious for extrajudicial killings, for silencing the media or anyone who thinks otherwise. And yes, to a new Burundi with no ethnicity, a new Burundi where the competence of the leader is what will determine whether he sits at the top of the country or not. A Burundi that is visionary, that is forward-thinking, a Burundi that is puts development first and not revenge, as we have seen in the language of the ruling party today. It is filled with revenge. It is filled with reminiscing stories of the former massacres that we have had in Burundi, which are tragic, absolutely tragic. What happened in 1972 is a tragedy, but it is not an excuse to use that, and they use that a lot in their speeches, in what I call hate speech. It's not an excuse today to continue to massacre people because you suspect. Because I, who is here today, look like a Tutsi, I'm a Tutsi, so you're going to reprimand me for what happened 30 years ago. It is absolutely unfair, and it is what is really driving the ruling party today. Really, in May 2015, the CNDD-FDD had an option of putting in another CNDD-FDD candidate. You cannot tell me that CNDD-FDD equals Pierre Nkurunziza. You cannot tell me that that party did not have anyone else to present. And if that had been the case, we would not be where we are today. So it is incredible irresponsibility, to have taken that step forward of the third term. But what is even worse are the consequences of that term. Over 1,000 people killed, over 5,000 people unjustly detained, over 250,000 people, Shaka, over 250,000 people who today are refugees across the region. And although they often like to bring up the case of Rwanda, I would like to remind the ambassador here and anyone who's listening that the vast majority of those refugees are in Tanzania, and the vast majority of them are Hutus, and that they are living in abject conditions. This is unacceptable.
I think your point is well made, Ketty. What about Mr. Ambassador? How do you respond to that?
Every time when we had elections in the past, we had such excuses. Mm-hmm. When the day was killed, some people said the elections maybe was not well organized. Why? Here on the world, because that elections were organized.
Is it because perhaps some people, the wrong person, won?
Some people in Burundi, when they are not popular, when they realize that they can win the popularity from the population, they used to use other means. Military coup have had, all the regimes before it was military coup, etc., etc. So we think time has come to listen to the population of Burundi, to listen to what they want, because they deserve respect. Under the leadership of President Nkurunziza, Burundi has transformed itself from a country driven by ethnic tensions, ethnic suspicions, to one in which the two major ethnic groups, namely Hutu and Tutsi, share the power.
This is talking reality. About Hutu and Tutsi, but what about the Gano? What about the Twa?
The Twa are on board. The Ghana also are on board. And this is reality. You can see from the office of the president, those working there, the vice president, second vice president, the office. You can go in all administration at all levels, even in embassies. In all embassies, can start with the embassy in Burundi, in Washington, D.C. There is ethnic gender balance. And even also people coming from all provinces of Burundi, what was not the case before.
So what is the problem?
It's very, very important to know that.
What is the problem? Because you are not going to restore peace and stability in your country unless you are able to put your fingers on precisely what the problem is so that it can be solved.
I think those excuses of the past, just to ignore the wish of the population, we have to solve that problem. And democracy, it's a process. You can't solve problem in one day. You understand? It's a process. And this crisis has shown really how we made progress in terms of national reconciliation. Some politicians used to manipulate population based on ethnic issues, on religious issues. Now they realize that the people of Burundi have changed. So what is very, very, very positive. Regarding the election of President Nkurunziza, allow me to recall that the Constitutional Court clarified ambiguous clauses in the Constitution and ruled that the President Nkurunziza was qualified to run for his last term. President Nkurunziza has clearly said, allow me to continue, please. I have not interrupted you.
Yes, I do hope that we will
Ketty, please.
Yes, and I hope we will receive equal airtime, please.
Ketty,
Thank
please.
you.
Yeah.
So, President Nkurunziza has clearly stated that this is his last term. And in 2020, a new political leader will be elected to serve in the office of the president. Instead of losing time, I would like to advise some politicians to start working the population to ensure that they will win in 2020 because time is running fast.
Thank you.
Otherwise, we will be surprised again.
Well, time happens not to be our best ally, but let me ask you the last question, Frederic. You heard what, of course, both parties have said. If we are talking about peace and reconciliation here, what about the fact that in the Arusha Peace Accords, included is the establishment of a Truth, Justice and Reconciliation Commission? What is that?
Yeah, that is probably one of the things that may have even triggered the problems that Burundi has at this point. You know, remember,
in what way?
That commission was, it normally had to start the following year. That commission was only launched a year ago, 15 years after. It means there are so many politicians in Burundi who have committed crimes, and the setting up of this commission is, you know, worries a lot so many people. They do not want this commission really to start working. And that is one of the problems, one of the underlying problems that is never talked about publicly.
Very interesting.